The cold metal air of Virex Station never felt welcoming. Lights flickered on cracked ceiling panels and distant clangs echoed through the narrow corridors. The space station floated near the edge of controlled space, far from Earth's law, and even farther from kindness. Captain Jalen Thorne stepped off his freighter, the Aegis, with a simple goal: buy power cells and get out. He didn't like Virex. No human with a working brain did. But sometimes parts and fuel could only be found in the darkest corners of the galaxy. He walked through the crowded market square, passing by alien traders, loud gamblers, and strange food stalls. A lizard-like merchant hissed an offer for fresh protein slabs, but Jalen kept walking. He wasn't here for trouble, not today. The real business happened below in the shadowed levels of the market, places where signs didn't show prices and guards watched every move. Jalen made his way to the lowest floor, where he knew illegal tech could be found. But as he passed a wide, round hall, he heard something strange. Silence. It was a black market auction, but the crowd wasn't cheering or shouting like usual. They were quiet, watching. Curious, Jalen stopped at the edge of the crowd. In the center of the hall stood a glass cage. Inside it was a woman. She looked young, maybe mid-20s in human years. Her silver hair fell in waves over her shoulders. Her skin glowed faintly blue under the lights. Lysari heritage, maybe. But what caught Jalen's attention most were her eyes. They were sharp, focused. Too focused for someone being sold. A tall alien in a dark robe stood beside the cage, speaking in low tones. Pleasure slave. Fully conditioned. Obedient. Valuable. For high-class leisure or private companionship. Jalen frowned. He hated that word. Slave. Humanity had left that past long ago. But out here, far from Earth, not every species believed in freedom. Still, it wasn't his business. He turned to leave, but paused. The woman's eyes locked onto his. It wasn't fear. It wasn't begging. It was a look he remembered seeing once, in a prisoner's eyes years ago during the Earth-Synther War. It was the look of someone who had lost everything, but still held on to one last thread of hope. The auctioneer called, "Starting bid, 3,000 credits." Hands rose. A green-skinned trader shouted, "4." Another replied, 5,000. Jalen turned away again. He had no interest in this. He was a soldier, not a buyer of people. But then something happened. The woman stepped forward in her cage. The movement was subtle, hidden from the crowd, but not from him. She pressed one hand to the glass and whispered. Jalen couldn't hear the words from where he stood, but he could read her lips. "I was a princess once." His heart skipped. Princess? Of what? He quickly pushed through the crowd. 10,000, barked a short alien in a metal cloak. 15, shouted someone else. The auctioneer raised an eyebrow. "A fine bid. Do we have more?" 20,000, Jalen said firmly, stepping forward. Heads turned. Humans rarely bid on anything here. The short alien growled, "Out of your class, Terran." Jalen didn't flinch. He pulled out a credit chip and tossed it to the auctioneer. "Certified, double cleaned, check it." The auctioneer scanned it. The scanner beeped. "Authentic." "No further bids?" the auctioneer asked. "Going once? Going twice?" The alien in the cloak stepped forward. "You have no idea what she is?" Jalen raised an eyebrow. "I think I'm about to find out." "Sold," the auctioneer declared. The cage door hissed open. The woman stepped out slowly. She didn't look afraid. She didn't bow. She simply walked beside Jalen as he turned and left. Back aboard the Aegis, Jalen unlocked the crew quarters and gave her a fresh set of clothes. Simple, warm, and clean. She dressed silently, then sat in the co-pilot seat as stars blinked outside the window. For a few minutes they didn't speak. Then softly she said, "You paid too much." "I'm used to bad deals," Jalen replied. "But I'm guessing you're not just anyone." She turned to him, her silver eyes watching. "Do you know of the Lysari Dominion?" He nodded. "They ruled half this sector once, high-tech society, crushed by the Synthar nearly 20 years ago. No survivors, as far as we knew. She leaned forward. They missed one. Jalen stared at her. You were a royal? I was second-born. My sister died in the invasion. I was taken, hidden, sold, resold, trained, modified. My memories were damaged but not lost. Jalen leaned back in his chair, trying to make sense of it. So, what do you want now? Her voice was calm but strong. I want my name back, I want my people free, and I need help. Jalen sighed. That's a big request, I'm no hero. I'm just a man with a ship. She looked at him. And you chose not to walk away. Silence filled the cabin. Somewhere, in deep space, a sensor beeped. Routine scans. Jalen looked at her once more. Her posture was regal, despite the scars of her past. He had no idea what he was getting into. But for the first time in a long while, he felt like maybe he had a purpose, again. Captain Jalen Thorne didn't believe in fate. He believed in shields, credits, and keeping his ship flying. But ever since the silver-eyed woman called Sarah stepped onto the Aegis, things had changed. She was quiet most of the time, walking. The ship's narrow halls with calm steps and silent thoughts. But she wasn't just a survivor. She carried herself with grace, with strength, even after all she had suffered. Jalen kept one eye on her and another on the radar. Trouble usually followed stories like hers. They were 3 jumps away from the trade hub of Telerix Prime. Jalen needed fuel and supplies. Cirrus needed answers. You're sure this beacon exists? Jalen asked as he leaned on the nav console. Cirrus stood beside him, her hands behind her back. Yes, the Dominion placed memory beacons throughout the stars. Each one holds records, secrets, proof of who I am. And you think one is still active? She nodded. The one near Vortan Drift, hidden in a broken relay. Only someone with Lasari DNA can open it. Jalen frowned. That sector's crawling with Synthar scouts. I know, she said calmly. But if we don't go, I may never prove who I was. Jalen didn't like it. But something inside, curiosity, maybe even respect, said it was worth the risk. He adjusted the course. Hang on. It's going to be a bumpy ride. The Aegis flew through a narrow asteroid field just beyond a dead star. The beacon was hidden inside a shattered Dominion satellite. On the outside, it looked like floating junk. But when Cirrus approached it with a DNA scanner, the device lit up with soft blue lights. It still works, she said, amazed. Jalen hovered nearby in the cockpit, ready to fly at the first sign of danger. Cirrus placed her hand on the core panel. The device opened slowly. A blue sphere rose. From within, a memory key. She touched it and her eyes flashed. For a moment, Jalen saw something strange. The air around her shimmered. A soft voice played, speaking in the old Lissari language. Princess Cirrus, of House Velen, if you are hearing. This then the Dominion has fallen. Cirrus stood frozen. The voice continued. You carry the last hope of your people. The royal memory key holds the Dominion's fleet codes. Protect it. Hide it. Rebuild. The message ended. The sphere dimmed. Cirrus looked down, her hands shaking. Slightly, Jalen stepped beside her. Fleet codes, you mean ships? Weapons? More than that, Cirrus whispered. Hundreds of ships, sleeping across the galaxy. They obey only my command. Jalen let out a low whistle. Well, that's something. Before they could speak more, alarms rang on the Aegis. Jalen ran back to the pilot seat. 3 ships approaching fast. Synthar class. He muttered. They must have tracked us. Cirrus gripped the back of his chair. Can we outrun them? We can try. The Synthar ships were sleek and silent, dark like knives in space. They fired before sending any warning. The Aegis shook as the first shot hit their rear shields. Jalen gritted his teeth and twisted the controls. Hold on! The freighter spun between asteroids, dodging beams of energy. Jalen fired back with the ship's pulse cannons, aiming not to destroy but to distract. They want you alive, he shouted. Otherwise we'd be space dust already, Cirrus replied calmly. Then let's not give them what they want. Jalen smirked despite. The danger. He hit the afterburners. The ship burst through the asteroid belt. The Synthar chased closely, but Jalen knew this field well. He flew low through a canyon-shaped gap between giant rocks. Brace! A Synthar ship followed, too close. Jalen flipped the freighter at the last second. The pursuing ship clipped a jagged boulder and exploded. The other two pulled back. Looks like they didn't expect a human pilot to fly like this, Jalen said with pride. Saris nodded, her voice steady. You're better than I thought. He raised an eyebrow. I'll take that as a compliment. Later, as they floated in a quiet orbit above a frozen moon, Jalen patched up the damaged engines while Saris sat in the cargo bay, holding the glowing memory key. He joined her, wiping grease from his hands. Are you sure about this? He asked. Raising an old fleet, challenging the Synthar. Saris looked up. They destroyed my home, my family. My people were scattered. I can't let them erase us. You're only one person. She smiled faintly. So are you. Jalen chuckled. Fair enough. There was silence for a moment. Not uncomfortable, just quiet. Then Saris said, Do you know what humans are called in Synthar records? He shook his head. Rogue species. Too unpredictable. Too dangerous, that's why they avoid direct war with Earth now. Jalen leaned back. Good. I like being unpredictable. She turned to him, her eyes serious. That's why I need you. Not just your ship, your thinking, your courage. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. All right, you've got my help. What's the next move? Saris stood, her voice clear. We find the fleet, and we show the galaxy that the Lesari are not gone, and that humanity stands with us. Somewhere far away in a dark chamber deep in Synthar space, a tall figure in black armor stood before a glowing screen. The screen showed an image of the Aegis, of Jalen, of Saris. A Synthar officer bowed low. She has awakened the memory key, my lord. The armored figure didn't move for several seconds. Then in a voice like metal grinding he spoke. Send the hunters, and double the bounty. Jalen stared at the blinking red light on his console. It was a warning. Someone had placed a tracker on the Aegis. They were being hunted. He ran a quick scan, trying to locate the exact source. It was buried deep in the cargo systems, likely planted during their visit to Virex Station. He cursed under his breath. We've been followed, he told Saris. Whoever's after you, they're serious. Saris stepped into the cockpit. She looked calm, but her eyes were sharp. Then we can't stay in one place. No, Jalen agreed. But we also need to fight smart. He turned in his seat and looked at her. If you really have access to those fleet codes, then we need more than a freighter. We need allies. We need backup. Saris nodded slowly. There is a hidden archive. A Dominion outpost deep in the shadow sector of Ralvin Reach. If we reach it, I can activate a part of the fleet. Jalen tapped a few keys on his nav screen. That's 2 jumps through Synthar-patrolled space. Risky. I know, she said. But if we don't try, the Synthar will find me first and everything will be lost. Jalen took a deep breath. All right, set course for Ralvin Reach. The journey was tense. The star routes were half broken, scattered with old war debris and abandoned stations. Twice they passed Synthar patrols hiding in asteroid shadows. Jalen flew like a ghost. Silent, careful, avoiding open channels and any jump gates that could be tracked. The Aegis had old tech, but it had one advantage. It didn't speak the same digital language as modern ships. It was invisible to most modern scanners. On the 3rd day, they reached Ralvin Reach, a dark system filled with gas clouds and broken moons. Jalen watched the radar. I don't like this place. Saris pointed out the window. There, behind, that shattered ring. He piloted the ship slowly forward. There it was, an old Lesari outpost, hidden on the dark side of a drifting moon. The station was silent, powerless, almost dead. But Saris reached for the console. Let me try. She plugged the memory key into a port. A pulse of blue light ran through the screen. Ancient systems flickered on. The station lit up slowly, like something waking from a long sleep. A voice echoed through the speakers. Royal. Identity confirmed. Welcome, Princess Saris Velen. Fleet command access granted. Jalen's eyes widened. Well, I'll be... The walls opened. Inside the station's hangar were 5 ships, sleek, silver, and shaped like wings. Saris smiled faintly. The Starborn fighters. Fast, intelligent, loyal only to Lysari blood. They entered the hangar. The ships were intact, though covered in dust. Jalen climbed into one and whistled. This thing is a beauty. The control system is organic, Saris explained. They connect to your mind. Jalen paused. That sounds risky. They adapt. They'll understand you. Jalen raised an eyebrow but smiled. Let's wake them up. They powered on the ships. The fighters responded quickly, scanning both Jalen and Saris. When Jalen sat in the pilot's seat, the system hummed gently, as if greeting him. He grinned. Okay, maybe I like this. Suddenly the radar lit up with red markers. Ships incoming, Jalen said. Synthar signature, big ones. Saris looked out the hangar window. They must have followed us. Jalen jumped from the fighter and ran to the control room. We need to leave now. But Saris stood firm. No, we fight. Jalen hesitated. We're outnumbered. Not outmatched, she said, already walking back to her fighter. These ships were built for war. Jalen nodded. All right, Princess. Let's see what these birds can do. As the Synthar ships approached, the hangar doors opened. Jalen and Saris launched in 2 Starborn fighters, while the Aegis pulled back into stealth mode behind the moon. The Synthar fleet sent 6 small destroyers and 2 heavy gunships. They moved like predators, silent and fast. Jalen's fighter glowed blue as it connected to his thoughts. Controls became instinctive. He moved, and the ship followed perfectly. He smiled. Now this is flying. Saris moved beside him, her ship weaving like a dancer between enemy blasts. They struck first. Energy lances shot from their wings, cutting through the shields of the nearest Synthar scout. One exploded in a flash of light. The Synthar turned quickly, but the Dominion ships were faster. Jalen looped around a gunship, firing 3 quick bursts into its engine core. It burst apart in seconds. These things are monsters, he said. Into the comm. They were built to fight an empire, Saris replied. But the battle wasn't easy. The Synthar ships were many, and more were arriving by the minute. One shot clipped Jalen's wing. He spun out for a moment before regaining control. I can't hold this forever, he warned. Saris responded calmly. Then we end it now. She dived toward the largest Synthar ship, the command vessel. Jalen gasped. Saris no. But her fighter released a pulse. A signal from the memory key. The signal overloaded the Synthar ship's systems, shutting down its engines and weapons. Jalen didn't waste the chance. He fired a full blast into the ship's core. The Synthar command ship erupted in a massive fireball. The rest of the fleet turned and scattered. The fight was over. Back on the station, Jalen pulled off his flight helmet and stared at Saris. You took a big risk? It worked, she said simply. Jalen laughed. You're dangerous. She smiled. Only to those who try to control me. He nodded slowly. We just fought off a Synthar squad. That means we're not just running anymore. Saris placed the memory key back into her jacket. We are fighting back. Far away, the armored Synthar Lord received another report. The officer trembled. They destroyed a command ship with old Dominion fighters. The Lord's voice was cold. Send the hunters, all of them. The stars outside the Aegis blinked cold and distant, but inside the ship, the air buzzed with new energy. Saris sat at the navigation console, her fingers lightly tracing the holographic map of the Darson Nebula. It was there, hidden among swirling gas clouds and cosmic dust, that the last fleet of the Lysari waited, silent, frozen in time, ready to rise. Jalen leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching her. You really believe these ships will listen to you? After all these years? Saris didn't look up. They will. They're bound by blood and technology. The fleet awaits only my command. Jalen scratched his chin thoughtfully. I've heard plenty of stories about lost fleets and ancient codes. Usually it's just old legends. She smiled softly. Legends are truth forgotten. The Dominion built these ships to outlast even the worst storms. Jalen nodded slowly. All right, Princess. Let's bring this legend back to life. The journey into the Darson Nebula was slow and dangerous. The swirling gas made sensors unreliable, and the threat of Synthar patrols lurked in every shadow. But the Aegis slipped through the cosmic mist like a shadow, silent and careful. Saris prepared the memory key for activation. This will link my mind to the fleet's command core, she explained. It's how I send orders, how the ships respond instantly. It's more than just control, it's a bond. Jalen frowned. Sounds intense. It is, but necessary. The ship entered. A hidden sector of the nebula. Ahead, the ghostly outlines of dozens of ships floated like sleeping giants in space. Sleek fighters, heavy cruisers, and swift scouts, all coated with dust and starlight. Jalen swallowed his awe. That's a fleet. Saris's voice was steady. A fleet that can change everything. She took a deep breath and touched the memory key to the console. The room filled with soft blue light. Her eyes closed. She sat still, as if reaching inward. Jalen watched her carefully. What's happening? She didn't answer aloud. Instead, the fleet's lights began to blink on one by one. The ships hummed to life, engines glowing faintly, weapons systems aligning. The silent giants awoke. Saris opened her eyes, now glowing faintly with the same blue light. The connection is strong, she said quietly. I can feel them. The fleet responds. Jalen felt a shiver of excitement. You're in command. Yes, but it's more than that. The fleet's AI works with me. Together we can fight with strategy and speed. He grinned. Sounds like you're ready to kick some Synthar behind. Saris laughed softly. We will. Suddenly, alarms rang on the Aegis. Jalen jumped to the controls. Incoming. At least 10 Synthar warships, heavy cruisers. They must have tracked us through the nebula. Saris's eyes narrowed. They want to stop us before we can rebuild the Dominion? Jalen didn't hesitate. Then we don't let them. The fleet moved as one. The starborn fighters took positions at the front, darting between the larger cruisers. The heavy ships powered up, their cannons glowing with lethal energy. Jalen climbed into a newly awakened fighter. He felt the familiar hum of the ship syncing with his thoughts. The battle was on. The first shots fired like thunder in the silence of space. Energy beams carved through starfields. The starborn fighters moved like shadows, hitting Synthar cruisers with pinpoint strikes. Jalen led a squadron weaving through enemy fire. We're fast, he radioed. And unpredictable. Saris responded from the command ship, her voice calm but fierce. Use the nebula's cover. Hit and run. The Synthar cruisers fired back with heavy plasma bolts. One hit a fighter's wing, but Jalen dodged just in time. Keep up the pressure, he shouted. The fleet responded, striking with a mix of ancient Lysari technology and Saris's command. The battle was fierce. Jalen could see why the Synthar feared humans. His erratic flying, daring moves, and quick decisions disrupted the enemy formations. In the heart of the battle, Saris focused on the command ship's systems. Her connection to the fleet strengthened with every passing moment. She sent out tactical commands directing fighters to flank, cruisers to concentrate fire, and scouts to relay enemy movements. The Synthar command began to falter. Jalen's squadron pushed through a gap, hitting the lead cruiser with a barrage of missiles. The cruiser exploded in a brilliant burst of light. Jalen cheered. That's one down, Saris smiled. We are more than legends, we are the future. The tide turned quickly. Synthar ships began to retreat. Jalen chased one destroyer, blasting its engines. "You can't run," he shouted into the comm. The destroyer exploded, leaving only drifting wreckage. Saris's voice was calm but proud. "The fleet is united again. Our enemies will remember the name Lysari." Jalen nodded, feeling a surge of hope. "And they'll remember that humans fought." Beside you. Back on the Aegis, Jalen and Saris watched the stars clear of enemy ships. "We did it," Jalen said quietly. "Yes," Saris agreed. "But this is only the beginning." He looked at her. "What now?" She stood tall, her eyes shining with determination. "We rebuild. We rally those still free. We end the Empire's reign." Jalen smiled. "Sounds like a plan." Far away, the Synthar Lord watched the battle reports with growing anger. "They awaken a lost fleet," he growled, "and they call on humans to fight with them." His voice was low and dangerous. "Send all hunters. Crush them before they can rise." The final battle was about to begin. Saris stood on the bridge of the flagship Velen's Pride, her silver hair flowing gently in the artificial breeze. The stars outside the viewport were distant and cold, but the fires of determination burned, bright inside her. Jalen Thorne, now her trusted ally and friend, stood beside her. His hands rested on the railing as he scanned the tactical display. "This is it," Jalen said quietly. "The Synthar capital world, the heart of the Empire." Saris nodded. "If we win here, we end their reign. We free my people. And we show the galaxy that Lysari and humans together are stronger than any empire." Jalen smiled. "Ready to make history?" Saris's eyes gleamed. "Always." The Velen's Pride led a fleet of Lysari starborn fighters, cruisers, and human vessels. United, for the first time in decades. Behind them, countless ships from distant systems joined the fight, inspired by the courage of the freed Lysari princess and the human who believed in her. As they approached the capital world, heavy defenses lit the skies, turrets, shield generators, and warships ready to defend their master. The Synthar Empire was not going down without a fight. Jalen's voice crackled over the comm. "Form up. Use the nebula for cover. We hit their defenses hard and fast." Saris sent orders through her. Mental link to the fleet. The ships moved like one, fluid and precise. The battle erupted. Energy beams and plasma blasts filled the void. The Lysari fighters darted between enemy fire, striking key points. Human cruisers fired long-range missiles, breaking shields and opening paths. Jalen piloted his fighter with skill and daring, weaving through danger and protecting Saris's command ship. Suddenly, alarms blared. "Enemy boarding craft detected," shouted a crew member. Saris clenched her fists. "They want to capture me." Jalen's eyes narrowed. "Not while I'm here." He rushed to gather a squadron to defend the Velen's Pride. The boarding fight was brutal, but short. Jalen and his team fought with fierce determination, pushing the invaders back. Saris coordinated repairs and defenses from the bridge, her voice calm and commanding. When the last enemy was expelled, she turned to Jalen. "Thank you." He smiled tiredly. "We're in this together." Meanwhile, in the heart of the capital, the Synthar Lord watched the battle unfold on giant screens. His expression was cold and cruel. "This is your final chance, Saris Velen," he sneered. "Surrender, and I may grant you mercy." Saris's voice came over the comm, strong and clear. "I will never bow to tyranny." The Synthar Lord snarled. "Then prepare to be destroyed." Back in space, the battle reached its peak. The Lysari fleet pushed through the enemy lines, reaching the surface defenses. Saris gave the order to land elite troops on the capital planet. "We take back what was lost." Jalen helped coordinate the landing, ensuring minimal losses. On the ground, Lysari and human soldiers fought side by side, reclaiming city after city. Days passed, and the tide turned. The Synthar Empire's control weakened as the people saw hope again. The invaders were driven back. Finally, Saris and Jalen stood before the ruined palace where the Synthar Lord waited. The final confrontation was quiet but fierce. Saris faced the tyrant with the memory key, glowing at her side. "You took everything from us," she said. "But you cannot take our spirit." The Synthar lunged, but Saris moved swiftly, using both her training and the fleet's energy coursing through her. Jalen arrived just in time to block a deadly strike. Together, they defeated the tyrant. With the Synthar Lord gone, peace returned. Saris was crowned Queen of the Lysari Dominion once more, but she did not rule alone. She shared power with humanity and other free worlds, building a new alliance. Jalen, ever the Wanderer, chose to return to the stars, a hero whispered about across the galaxy. The galaxy was changing. Where once there was fear and oppression, now there was hope. And it all began when a man bought a slave and found a princess.